Hi, this is Mr. Mike from the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with episode number 46 of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. Welcome, everybody. We do this every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on Facebook, and then we post them all on Mr. Mike Sgrignoli's YouTube page. So thanks for tuning in, and let's learn something today. Great animal today to discuss. They're always cool. This one had scientists pretty confused for a while. The name of the animal is called Tanystropheus. I'll say it slow. Tanystropheus. Tanystropheus lived about 230 million years ago, mid-Triassic. Its name, Tanystropheus, means long-necked one. Now, is it a sauropod? No. Is it a swimming animal? We don't really know. No. Let's take a look at it. This is the Tanystropheus. Take a look at the neck. Wow. Wow. Scientists looked at this and said, how can this thing even move around? Well, it found a way. It found a way not only to move around, but it found a way to eat and found a way to live. But wow. The in real life thing was about 20 feet long, and 10 of the feet were made up just by the neck. So here you had this extremely odd-looking animal with a neck that was as long as the rest of the body. Now let's take a close look at some of the physical attributes of Tanystropheus. First of all, let's look at his face. All right, his face had teeth, which means they were sharp teeth. So that means he probably did go after fish, not necessarily exclusively fish, but the rock strata that he was discovered in was definitely aquatic. So they said he either went swimming or he walked along the shore and went fishing with his long neck. Let's take a look at his feet. The front limbs are shorter than the back limbs. A lot of confusion just on the way the animal is built. He doesn't look like he would be the most comfortable at walking on land, but at the same time, there are certain things that you would see about an aquatic animal that would make it a lot more logical for it to have gone swimming, namely its tail. Its tail, they said, was actually kind of flattened, but it was flattened this way, not this way. If you have a tail like this and you're moving through the water, you wave it back and forth and that propels you through the water. A tail like this doesn't really do a heck of a lot. So they're not absolutely sure. We do know one thing. We felt that for the longest time that it kind of confounded the laws of physics with an animal of this size. How in the world could it possibly get around? And I actually have two models of this. I want to show you something I discovered this morning that I thought was fascinating. The neck was very light, comparatively speaking, to the rest of its body. When you have an animal such as, well, let's give you an example, a perfect example, an Elasmosaurus, which it looks a little bit like Elasmosaurus. Definitely a swimming animal, okay? But notice this has flippers, whereas Tanystropheus has feet. So the thing that makes the plesiosaur, in this case the Elasmosaurus, different is that it did have a long neck, but not as long as the rest of the body. Well, actually, when you look at it pretty closely on this model, it does look similar. But in terms of the neck itself, the neck made up about 50% of the animal's weight. All right, so the means that the center of gravity for the animal was probably right around on its shoulders, whereas Tanystropheus had a very light neck, and only 20% of its weight was made up by its neck. Most of the weight took place back here in the booty, right above the back legs. All right, this is where it's had the most muscles and it had the most weight. So instead of it being the center of gravity being up here, it was back here. So that meant that it probably could go fishing with its head. It would stand along a riverbank or somewhere where he had access to the water but he didn't even have to get his entire body wet. He just stood there and used the weight back here to hold him secure on the shoreline as his head dipped around or went after fish. Now, I discovered a second model that I had of this animal, which I found really interesting. If you see what happens here, this one here seems to have more of the weight distributed to the head. If I touch the one back here, it seems to be more secure. So just in this little model alone, you can see the difference of the animal would have in terms of being able to go on the shore and stay there. This one, very unstable because the weight is distributed more up here, whereas in this particular model, see the difference? So that's Tanystropheus. It had 12 to 13 vertebrae in its neck, so it didn't really have a lot. They were just extremely elongated. They, for the longest time, were not sure, and really, still to this day, they're not sure, was it terrestrial or was it aquatic? Kind of think that maybe it did both. Based on the physiology of the animal, they probably felt that it probably could go swimming, but it didn't stay there. It wouldn't have made sense to be completely aquatic because it would have had other evolutionary traits that would have made it perfect for swimming, but it's not actually perfect for swimming. It's better for staying on the beach. So this was discovered in the late 1800s, named in 1886 by Francesco Bassani. What did Francesco think it was that he had when he discovered it? He thought he had a pterosaur. Why did he think he had a pterosaur? Well, he didn't realize that what he was looking at here, which we know is the tail, kind of thought that was the neck. I'm sorry, it was the neck. He thought it was the tail, which is why he thought it was a pterosaur. So, you know, this is kind of what he envisioned the thing looking like. He didn't know. He just assumed that there was none of the wings left, but he put the head up here. When he thought it had a long tail, it actually had a long neck. So, Francesco, thank you for digging it up, but it was not a pterosaur. And it was not a plesiosaur. It was its own thing. So, 20 feet long. The discoverer was actually Christian Erich Hermann von Meyer, who I've mentioned before. He discovered it, but again, they didn't know what it was. They just had a few bones of it and didn't know exactly what the heck this animal was. There is some discussion over the tail. Let's talk about the tail for just a second. Did you ever hear about a lizard that sometimes if an animal is attacking the lizard, the animal bites the tail and the tail can detach and grow back later? That is a theory about Tanystropheus. They think that maybe it did that. It's hard to say accurately. There's no hard evidence that says it did that. That's kind of a theory, but it would be interesting to see this thing lose its tail and then grow it back later. One of the problems with that, though, is we just discussed how it has its weight back here and it's able to keep itself on the shore and go fishing. Well, if it lost its tail or it detached its tail to get away from a predator, then that would screw up its whole weight balance. So Tanystropheus, it's a very interesting animal, and we will read the story of Tanystropheus, written last evening by Mr. Mike, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching these live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can check them out anytime at all. Just go to Mr. Mike Sgrignoli on YouTube, and we have all of our videos there. The Tanystropheus. The Tanystropheus possessed a neck that would defy the laws of physics, or would such a neck disqualify? His neck was long enough to have us question how he could parade around and grab a bite from his own neighborhood. We know near water was the spot he liked to hang about. But did he swim around or stay on land? There's still some doubt. We know he likely chowed on fish, but did he dive right in? Or did he stand along the shore and wait to spy a fin? Perhaps he thrust his head in while the rest of him stayed dry. There's evidence to that effect, and I will tell you why. Although his neck was lengthy, it was actually quite light. His weight was centered near his butt, so he was balanced right. This way, when he would snag a fish, he had the strength to pull that single fish out of the sea, or even a mouthful. His teeth were surely sharp enough to land a fish or squid, so this is what most scientists agree on what he did. Surprisingly, when he was found, his bones were so obscure they first identified him as a brand new pterosaur. Can you imagine Tanystropheus high in the air and dive bombing the fishes that he spied from way up there? But we don't need another thing to hinder and confuse. It's hard enough deciphering these ancient dino clues. Let's just assume that Tanystropheus did pretty well at finding food, because otherwise I'd have no poem to tell. The Tanystropheus by Mr. Mike, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. As we mentioned, we do this every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll say hello to Sarah this morning for tuning in. Hi, Sarah. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Make sure you wash your hands repeatedly throughout the day. Mr. Mike for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll do it again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go out and learn more about Tanystropheus. Make sure your balance of weight is in the right place too.